Alright, today we're going to install a new hydraulic steering damper on a 2010 Patrol. I already put one on my 2008 Tourist, and we'll talk about that a little bit later, about how it works and all, and how nice it is. But right now the first thing you need is the kit, of course. It comes with the damper. And this clamp was on both positions when I got mine. One was turned this way, one the other. Not a problem, easy to adjust. The bracket here goes on the sidecar mount there, and then you get these two large O-rings. At least this kit came with them. I understand that there's been a change in that, but that's what this one came with, a couple of bushings. And you get two bolts that are a little longer, and then you get this third bolt that you actually don't need to install on the older rigs, so we'll just put that to the side. And this plate, the first thing you'll need to do, the only thing you need to do to this kit is prep this plate. Drill this hole out. They say to a 1/2 inch, but I actually measured the post, and the post on it was just a little bit smaller than 31/64. So I had a 31/64, so I drilled it out. It's about 5/1000ths of an inch larger than the post. Made a perfect fit, nice and tight with no wobble at all. So that's what I used, was 31/64. You're going to need some 13mm wrenches, 19mm wrenches, and whatever size Allen key you need, you just need to get that. I just fiddled around till I found one that fit. And on the Tourist, of course, this was also holding the horn bracket on, which was a different size. You just had to get whatever size you need to do that. So let's get it started and put this thing on. Alright, the first thing you're going to want to do is loosen the friction damper completely and unscrew it until the plate that's under here comes off. Okay, we got that off. We're not going to need that anymore. Next thing we need to do is to take the retainer plate here that shares a bolt with the horn bracket. So we're going to have to take this loose. The horn will be loose for a minute, and then we'll put it all back together without this bracket here. Okay, we got this out. This is actually the friction plate, and this keeps it from spinning so that you actually get the friction. We're not going to need that anymore, but we do need to put the horn back. So, alright, we got the horn back on and it's nice and tight. So now, it's time to put this plate on, and all it does is screw into the same rod here, and then this hole fits over the stud that is down there. There we go. Now this, all we do is, at this point, is its decoration. So we'll just turn it so that it's tight, and this spring acts like a lock washer, if you will, to keep this. And as long as it won't turn on its own, it's fine. It's tight enough. If you do find looseness in it, just crank it on down till it's tight, but this should be good. That's good there. So now we need to install the bracket on the sidecar strut mount here. You need two 19mm wrenches for this usually. I don't know that any of them that are a different size. Now in both cases, the bolt that was in here was long enough to accommodate this bracket without any problems. Now you want to tighten this down, but not all the way. Leave this so that it'll move around. Once we get the arm mounted here, we'll tighten this up into the final position. This one is turned different, and when you put it on, the Allen keys are down on the bottom, and I don't like that. It'll be easier for me if they're at the top. So what I want to do is turn these around, and that will take this. Now if there's a reason like I said, the other one was turned the other way. I noticed this one was backwards, so I don't think there's a reason that they point them in any particular direction other than what day of the week it was and who did it. So, not going to worry about that. It's easier to access this way. And don't want to tighten it down all the way. We're going to have to adjust that here in a minute anyway. Now, this will go on here from underneath. The bushing actually fits inside this O-ring, and then the bushing goes on, just like that. And I'll put that on there to retain it. Same thing for this one. And this one put on. Okay. Need a 13mm wrench and the Allen key that fits under there. When there is a nut and a bolt involved, I like to bring the bolt up from underneath. And the reason I like to do that is if this nut were ever to work its way off for any reason, the bolt's going to fall out, and I'm going to see that there's a problem here. This bolt's going to fall out fairly quickly, and I'm less likely to miss it to when I need it. If I put this in this way, imagine if this nut somehow falls off the bottom, and I understand it's a nylon lock nut, but just if it were to fall off the bottom, this is what we're left with, and this could ride in there for miles and rattle around and come out unexpectedly. So that's just something that I have always done. And this hangs from this bracket. This actually goes between the arm and the bracket there. And all I want to do is lightly tighten this so it doesn't come loose and fall down. There we go. Now, I'm going to come back over to this side and install this onto this bracket. Now pay attention to your cable routing that's up under here. I do have a cable that's coming through here, but I don't believe that will be a long-term problem. You're close to being done other than adjusting the length of the stroke for the cylinder, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment. Okay, now this one's tight, the other one's tight. We'll tighten this up here in a moment. But let's adjust the length of stroke. Now the way we do that is we simply loosen these two cap nuts right there so this can slide now. Okay. Of course we got no problem that way, so let's take it all the way to a right hand turn and let the entire cylinder slide. That's all the way over. There. Now at a full right hand turn, what I'm doing is leaving about 1/4 of an inch left here. So that's a full right hand turn, and I've got 1/4 of an inch of the stroke left. Okay, and you don't want to over tighten this, but you do want to make sure that this is nice and snug. You don't want that moving while you're riding. Quick double check here. It's full right. We've still got 1/4 of an inch. Full to the left is good. That's good. Now we're going to check our throttle cable again here. I'm not liking what I'm seeing. Here. Now we're hanging loose, so this is what it should be. It's just caught over there, so that should be good. very light pressure on the throttle cable there, not a lot. I don't think that's doing any harm there. Of course, when I go this way, that's plenty of room. So we'll try it there. If I have any trouble with the throttle cable, I can always change it and bring it back to the back here. So now we need to finish tightening these 19mm bolts. Now the way this damper works is this is an adjustment. Right now it's at its loosest position. I guess you could call that off. You turn it and it clicks as you turn it clockwise. The more you turn it clockwise, the tighter or the more resistance the cylinder will give you. So if you go all the way full on, which is where we're at now, this will be very difficult to turn. Okay? And we still have our clearance. That's why we need 1/4 of an inch, because that tightened down a little bit. We still have our clearance with no trouble. But this is very difficult. I don't say difficult, it's very stiff to turn. If we lighten it up all the way, now it's nice and easy to turn. It's like there's no damper at all. And what I started with on mine was 10 clicks on the Tourist, and I found out that was about right. At about 10 clicks, that gave me the resistance that seemed fairly comfortable for me, and it rode well. So we're going to start the Patrol off in that same position. So why would you want the hydraulic steering damper instead of having the friction one? Well, one thing is if you have poor upper body strength or less upper body strength, like my wife, when she's riding, she has less upper body strength. She tends to loosen the damper a lot to make it easier to steer. And the problem with that is if you loosen it too much, you introduce some wobble in the front wheel, and that kind of can get scary. So you want to tighten the damper back down. Well, now it becomes more difficult to steer. So you're constantly fighting too much or too little. And in her case, I think this is going to be an excellent solution for her. Now for me, I like the looser feel of the steering, the ease of turning and the ability to turn without having to put too much force or effort into it. And I like a little bit of feedback from the road when I'm going. So this actually has improved that for me. When I took it out and I rode it, I guess I've put maybe 15, maybe 20 miles on it. And I like the way that it turns, but I like the little bit of extra feedback that I get. And around 10 clicks for me seems to work out well. Now, another hidden advantage to this that I kind of realized after we rode it is I know that I prefer it at about 10 clicks. Turn it clockwise 10 clicks from 0, and this is about where I ride. And my wife is very likely, even though we start here, going to choose a different position. She may ride at 12 or 15 or 8, I don't know yet. But I can remember I like 10 clicks. She may remember that she likes 6 or 15. And when we go to get back on the rig, if I ride the Patrol, I can quickly adjust it where I want it and ride and be comfortable with it. And then when she rides, she can quickly adjust it back where she likes it and be comfortable with it. We found with the friction knobs, my son rode the Patrol recently, and it upset her tremendously because he changed the friction knob and she had it perfect like she liked it. And she spent half the trip trying to figure out how to get the friction knob exactly back where she had it before to get the feel back that she was used to. So I think this will also help with that. Otherwise, I just think it's a good upgrade to do, and it's certainly very simple. The first one you do might take you 30 minutes. After that, you can probably do them in 10 or 15 minutes without any issue at all. So hopefully, if you're riding a Ural out there, pick you up a steering damper and add it on there. If it's I think they started adding them in 2014. So if you've got a pre-2014 and you want the steering damper, that's how you do it. And that's kind of the benefits of it and the feel of it. So, ride safe and be careful. I wanted to add a footnote, something I forgot to mention about the way that this works. When you move slow, the steering damper offers very little to no resistance. So if you're turning the handlebars like you're riding or turning a corner, even at the tighter positions, it offers much less resistance than when it does when it's fully bound up. But in the loose position around 10 clicks, if you turn slow, you'll get a nice, it feels like there's no damper at all involved. But if you try to turn it suddenly, like bump steer, feedback from the road would try to turn the wheel on you, the damper kind of blocks that down. It grabs hold of it instantaneously and damps that movement. Before you install it, if you get one of these, set it at about 5 or 6 clicks and move it real slow. You'll see that it's not a problem at all. But then take it and try to run it through real fast, and you'll feel a lot of resistance build up quickly and then go away. And kind of like a non-Newtonian fluid aspect almost. But that's one of the great benefits to this. With the friction damper, you have full damper all the time. You set the friction, it is what it is, and you're going to get that same resistance no matter how fast you turn. This one is kind of a graduated resistance depending on how fast you're turning, because feedback from the road tends to be fast. You hit something and the wheel wants to jerk around, or if you want to get into a wobble, that tends to be fast and the damper takes that out. But if you want to put in a nice steady input, it tends to run real well with very little resistance. Makes a nice comfortable ride. Well, it's been about 3,000 miles since that video, and I have to say we're both still happy with the steering dampers. They're doing good on the front of the bike. Makes the handling a little bit better in my opinion than the friction damper, so we're going to give those a thumbs up.